We call the meeting to order at 5:05. I have a motion to approve the minutes for the May meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Maria, and seconded by Christine. Any discussion, any corrections that we may need? Okay, so shall we vote? Those in favor of accepting the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Minutes are accepted. Public comments, is there anybody on the phone that would like to comment? Okay, let's move on to open space business. So I moved the agenda around a little bit to start with Evan. We had talked in the past about a town-owned property that is located on Mile Creek Road. And Martha asked open space and affordable housing to each vote whether they would be interested in using the property or whether they would pass on the property. She was contacted by a new resident who was interested in possibly purchasing the land. So I have not been there, but I will rely on Mr. Fenton, who has, and he's talked to both Evan and I, and I think Evan said in his discussion, Fred described it as kind of a bomb site. I guess it isn't dug up. There's a lot of holes and pits in it, filled with invasives. It's not a particularly attractive property. Doesn't show.
It was mine, for different gravel or something. And the way Fred described it is kind of like a farming lane, you know, you drop bombs on holes 10 or 12 feet deep. And I guess it's right now.
You don't want.
So,
Let me just interrupt you for a second there. So when we were looking at that land, I noticed that there was a lot of wetlands immediately adjacent to it. And I think I might have sent you a map that has frontage on the Black Hall River that's owned by a family. Evan had talked to it.
just pass that around.
Yeah.
The town-owned land is orange, and the property directly north of it is owned by a family. Husband passed away last year, and it's an interesting piece of property because it has fairly extensive wetlands, tidal wetlands, but it also has upland forest, the ground shoreline. And I talked to the owner, and she and her children, she says her children want to keep the property just as it is. And I thought that because of the property, the town-owned property, even if it's town-owned property isn't all that great, it could be an anchor for legal restrictions or conservation easement on the property to the north. But I don't think that's absolutely necessary, but it's usually better if you have an easement that is attached to a property that's owned in fee. In other words, that you own all the rights to it, and which the town owns that 1 acre orange piece. You'll see.
How's the access? There doesn't seem to be any road access to these properties.
No, it would be a an open space piece that would not be particularly.
Or is that adjacent? Down, one down. I think it was before my time. I've heard that. Yeah, it was either on that property or.
Really, there was a.
No. Yeah.
I didn't know.
You can pass this around. This gives a little better idea, perhaps. So this is the town property in blue here.
That might be why it's all.
And this is the property for the family that Evan was talking to, and you can see there's a lot of wetlands in there. So, one of the things that Jim Lampos is particularly interested in is trying to conserve marshland in town. And this would be a way to preserve a really nice stretch of marshland right on the river. So even if we don't keep that piece, I think it's something that Evan might pursue. By the way, I wanted to tell you that I contacted land use. They did not have a survey for the property. I contacted Vicki, the town clerk. She's looking, but she said unless somebody applied for something, they probably wouldn't have a survey unless the owner provided it to them, so.
Yeah. So I walked this property years ago.
The one on Rose Road.
The one on Stroll Road. Because the owner at that time, thinking maybe if we could get access to the upland portion of that marsh complex, we could sell it as a building lot. Well, we'd have to get permission from DEP, build, probably would be a bridge over the marsh. We get vehicles across the marsh, and that would be $250,000. And that was more than the property was at the time. So he abandoned that. I think now the family, he's gone, wife and the children, grown children, who I think are going to inherit the property, want to keep it the way it is, and also have the ability to keep trespassers off their land. They had some issues of people in boats, canoes, and kayaks, and building fires, camping, things like that.
Are the people that own the property, do they still live in Lima? Are they still local?
Yeah, they live in on the.
They live there, okay, so they live in on that
on
property.
Owen Road, yeah, and they field, a meadow that goes down to the marsh.
Okay.
Pretty piece of property.
Yeah, it looks nice, big.
And I was thinking that we could start acquiring conservation easements along the river. It would be great to keep development back from the river, and protect the salt marsh, wildlife, further.
So the blue is the town land and
The blue is
the town land and the orange is the private property.
okay, and that orange is the family.
The family's property, yes, and
But the little blue square is what we're looking at. Oh, I see. That's actually gold or
so
craters.
I understand, I know that we've talked about them since I've been on the commission. The town apparently owns a number of conservation easements on private property. This would be just one more like that, and they don't necessarily have the anchors you talked about.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
The attorneys that I've worked with over the years on conservation and the Nature Conservancy, who took some of the first easements that were produced in the United States. British have been using easements for years, public access to planet Earth. But the conservation easement was something brand new in the early 19th started, and actually the attorney who wrote the first easement adapted the easement, British language, to the American law system, and that's how they came to be. He was in Norwich,
So for this particular property, do you have a sense if the heirs would be in sync with, Mrs. Tuccione about having an easement on the property? Is she the decider, or we need to discuss further?
That would be something that we would have to discuss and have or I think we have two sons, whether they
So I think it's, go
I
ahead.
just had a question. By having an easement on privately owned land, does that mean that if we did own the 1.8 acres, people could use?
Not necessarily. It would be how the easement would be written. That was the reason the town actually bought the McCulloch property, because even though it had an easement on it, the public had no right to access the property.
yeah.
Which is a conservation easement, stipulated, obviously can't build.
Yeah.
Just has to, and you can't access, but it's.
And it's still private property.
Yeah.
And the owners of underlying fee interest in the property, the actual ownership, have the right to keep people off.
They rescinded, or is it?
Ann is becoming an easement expert.
They're changing taxes on the property. The state is putting another open space taxation on tax ordinance. So there's incentive there for owners. Yeah, so there's a benefit to donating an easement, and that's probably what we asked for.
Land with a lot of marsh, what's this, that's there, you take that.
Yeah.
It actually makes the underlying property more valuable.
Well, what it does, it makes the basin property, unrestricted property valuable. And that's what you, yeah.
So what would your suggestion be about that town property, Evan? Should we?
Well, I think it's worth sitting down and having a discussion. This is the direction.
Does she seem interested?
She sounded quite interested and going to drop off. She wanted to know how much of the property, where the boundary line was, like looking at this and thinking somewhere right in here, but she may have a different idea.
Vicki Urbowitz is still looking. She may still have a survey.
Yeah.
I'll probably know better tomorrow. So
Okay.
when you throw this out as an approach, I'll tell Martha that we're in discussions with an adjacent property owner about a conservation easement in favor of the town. And if that goes forward, open space would be interested in hanging on to this anchor piece.
Mm-hmm.
And if it looks like the conservation easement is not going to go through, then we wouldn't have interest in that property and should consider selling it. Does that sound fair?
Pretty much.
Would you make a motion to that effect? You would parrot my words.
I move that we have a discussion with Marianne. If it doesn't look like it's going anywhere, then we would have had in the eye hanging on to the current town property.
Second? And, any other discussion? All in favor?
Why would the town want to sell that property?
Why would they want to sell it?
Yeah.
If it doesn't meet any of the town's objectives in being of open space value, of affordable housing value, probably not buildable for any town building, that's kind of above my pay grade, Fred, but I guess if someone is willing to pay the town, that's money into the town's coffers.
Who might want to buy that?
Someone that's new to town that has adjacent properties, you would add that property to his existing holdings.
So it would be built on Most likely not until.
I don't know, I don't know what prompted the person's interest. The person contacted Martha about the same time the other property was purchased. I understand he hasn't pursued that and hasn't gotten back to her, so maybe he no longer has interest in it. I really don't know.
It's a small piece of property that does not protect the naturalness of
Yeah.
the area. Yeah, well, it's a good buffer between the houses on Mile Creek Road and creeks that feed into the Blackhawk River. And so it's a good biological, in that sense.
Well,
I know you can't use it
as open space, but it's certainly.
That's an interesting point, Fred, so I will come back to that later in this meeting. I can't jump around because this is a special meeting. We have to go through the agenda as if. So, any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. And abstentions? No, okay, thank you. Would you like to discuss your visit to Champlain North and your talks with Susan Stotts and Tom Degnan?
June 9th, there were a lot of representatives from, but a lot of representatives from Eversource, Tony Bennett Tree, who were discussing the poles that were put in 1962, some in Ledges, and they're decommissioned telephone poles and wires that aren't operating with their plan is to remove all of those poles between Champlain North and Boggy Falls, and then through Whippoorwill, Ames, maybe part of the color if I remember correctly. And so Tom Heath, I think it is, had a very good meeting with everybody who, they were all on the same page and saying, not if there's going to be any ruts in the holes from these machines coming in, but there will, it's not an if, okay? It's going to be. So he wanted people to be aware that they're going to maybe create some ruts and that they are responsible for repairing it, putting up signage, say, working area. When I walked later, I didn't see any signs out on the street or by the trailhead. But then I wrote to Susan and said that she was going to inform Tony Tree people and Eversource to get some signage up and put some words in Martha's, behind the old line in. So Martha had put a notice on the town website. I don't know that anything was written up for the local line. But Monday through Friday, basically the trails are going to be closed, with them being accessible on the weekend for the whole month of June, and then they're going to update me on the next phase of their project.
Did you see the email from Suzanne Colton Carey?
I did not.
Okay, I think I CC'd you. She wrote to me and said, who's cutting trees down on Champlain North? And I says, were you hiking there? She says, yeah. And the tree company, I guess, was on a lunch break, and she chatted with them. So I will write her back to see if there was any sign saying, don't hike or be careful hiking. And if there wasn't.
They took the wires out of last winter. The power company.
Eversource is supposed to put up the signs when they're doing their pole removal. Right now, Tony Bennett from Bennett Tree is doing the tree work to kind of clear the path so that Eversource can get in. So,
Are they using Comcast?
not necessarily. That's like a last resort. They think they could shave the poles down to a few feet and, use make it into chip it, thank you. And so there may be one or two, but right now that's not,
If they chip the poles, I don't know about, would there be creosote or something in the poles if they chip and leave them on the ground? Would that be an issue, do you think?
They just leave the chips, if they are put it in the sixties, that they are treated with creosote. And some people talk to either Eversource or tree company.
Yeah.
If the tree company doesn't know that. With the pole removal,
correct,
maybe he's just getting Eversource access.
exactly.
Is this a line that's being abandoned or has been?
It has been abandoned and Eversource wants to remove it. Greg had found out about it, and I ended up being one following it up.
Yeah, well,
When it's where?
Susan Stocks contacted me a long time ago, and she's, we're gonna be doing this in a couple of years, you know, and, but then as they got closer, I kind of lost contact with it. They did have Tom Degnan come up, Fred, from your work with the commission, what's his, authority, like over open space thing? Can he tell Eversource not to leave the chips there if there's?
I'm not sure about that, he basically says it's okay to cut a tree down,
Okay.
I don't know about creosote.
Full of cut the pole.
So they were just removing the poles and taking them somewhere else.
Westwood.
Maybe I misspoken that the poles are not gonna be chipped, but the trees.
Trees will be chipped.
The trees will be chipped. I think
Okay.
the poles are gonna be cut and removed.
Okay, that'd be better, obviously.
Using helicopters.
As I recall, I don't know exactly what lines are taken out, but some lines go up some pretty steep slopes and pretty rocky areas in Champlain North.
I wonder if that's that line that goes all the way over to 4 Mile River Road. Everyone needs it. There's a line that traverses town, and I think that's where they put that 12-acre solar farm, north of,
It is brush. I found it in email. Trimming at each pole location throughout the right of way to allow the removal of poles and wires within the east area of the electric right of way. Headed tree will complete with lightweight tracking equipment, and put access of all brush to be chipped on site or access, with the track skid steer allows limited tree trimming along the open space trail. They had these big rubber mats along to the right of the Barbizon Oak for the chipper machine to pass. Care will be taken to not damage the trails. Transmission crews will access the pole locations to the same trails as the tree trimmers. They will use track equipment. To lower wires and poles, the poles will be cut above ground about 2 feet in height, with very portion remaining to momentalize the right of way. For non-accessible by tractor, and UTV may be used to bring out pole sections. Transmission crews will utilize Wickford Lane parking area for a wire pulling area, and also Boggy Hole Road. If any poles are accessible only by foot, they will be lowered and flown out by a long line helicopter at the end of the project. ABI helicopter from New Hampshire is contracted to complete the work if
Thank you, Andrea. We should move on, but that's it. We'll give everybody a heads up on what's happening. Russell, do you want to talk about where we're at with our mapping project?
So we've actually made some pretty good progress with Steve Perry. Very good, he's able to copy some of the maps. I'm going to go through and show you where the drive and start with Steve is going to open space. So this is a second version. Kind of hold this up, probably can see very well.
Yeah, protected ranch.
Well, yeah,
We all have one in front of us.
You have a different one, but.
Oh, okay.
So this is the version after
this is,
I kind of walked all the trails. So he had some other trails that you can barely see. We from open access map, using LiDAR data, and our old map data. But he created these maps. I walked every piece of the trail, made sure that it's correct. I'll point out some areas where they're not correct. So he's actually taken those additions now to the ones in front of you. Now you'll notice the noise family states is eliminated, but that's new. So there's one of these open trail maps. Like that, all the way across. They're not part of our trails. I can remove those from the map. You can still see them, but they're not blazed.
I think the news trail,
They're used enough that like trail lights, people, you can see them by LiDAR. That's gonna be important though for some of the other parcels, because those trails are now what we've actually done. I think it's interesting, he's very responsive. You haven't seen the final version, this is version 2, we'll put it. I don't know how much additional points of interest information is going to include. Today we try to finish the rest of the maps this week. I've gone through this and he captured all the comments I made. He's collected all the trails. Looks pretty good. It means space on that.
so,
That's kind
yeah.
of close to what it was. He's pretty close to what it looked like.
Did I send everybody out kind of my comments and notes on these maps? I forgot what I sent. If I did that, I'll send it around again. So in looking at this map, one of the things I would want him to do is to differentiate better between the fact that these are actually two distinct properties, as opposed to one property named Ames-Noise. And the other thing that I've been unsure about is back a long time ago in looking at the maps, maybe you can have some insight on this, Evan. John Noyes was surprised that there was a Native American cave on the Noyes land. I always thought that that was on Steve Ames' land, given the kerfuffle between Land Trust buying it and Diana Atwood Johnson kind of talking to Steve.
The long range, kerfuffle between, Steve Ames and who took a lot of material out of those caves. I think you're stored at Wesley and some, theological material.
Where would Sheep's Ledge be on this map, Evan?
I think it's right in here.
Okay.
is it the one on the red trail?
No, it's
The one on the
between
blue?
between the white and the orange.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So,
Right here.
This is here, right?
That is marked on our own.
okay, so, because I know that was the property that the town eventually bought from Ames that included Sheep's Ledge. So it's probably right on the borderline between the two properties.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it looks like it's so on the border of the noise property.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I realize these are trail maps, focus, but, I don't think, it'd be nice to have these named evergreen, but, it's good to name some of that.
The roads?
Yeah, and,
Well, there's evergreen on there, but it does not show up particularly well.
well, I just mean, like, it would be nice for people to know how to get there, in
Yeah.
addition to, like, where to go once they're. So there's two parking, and there's a P on River Road, then, it'd be nice to, I think that people, one of people's biggest questions is where they park, that trail.
So as we're going over this, I hope that we'll have comments like Ann just made. And if you can all email Russ and CC me with the comments, that would be terrific. I'm looking at that,
So
this
this is
map.
what's the wheel up here?
Oh, on the right-hand side.
Yeah, the Whipple kind of runs around it. And the other thing about this property is he's got the driveway that we don't have access to. And this looks like is this Bucky Brook over here? Yeah, and that's not town property either. Do the fact
So
that,
that's not the actual property.
does it, pardon?
Well, it's parking from the front.
Yeah, from the corner.
But I don't know.
We can drive off.
Here, you
What's
can
that?
walk across. Is that little cut through that's to the cedar?
Yeah, but when you come to that,
Okay.
remove the parking legend there.
Russ, is that, is this meant to,
That's on the color map, it's on it.
Okay.
Russ, is this like part of the preserve? See those two, like,
Yeah, no, that's the Bucky Brook.
is
And
that access to Jerk? I've never hiked there. Well, it's
so-
Jerk,
much of that is private property, Bill. There's a little piece of land trust land that's right about where that brook touches Whippoorwill, small little piece.
Okay.
And he's got the Ames roadway in here, which is, we don't have access to. That's a private road, that has to be taken off as well. In looking at this map, does anyone find all his little structures shown outside the property to be excessive detail, or is that not bother you all?
Oh, the little houses?
Yeah.
I think that's,
Okay.
I mean,
It could go away and it's
Yeah.
going to be better, but.
It doesn't really have to be part of the.
For a roof, I think that'd be fine.
And one of the last point while looking at the Ames map, you can see kind of bisecting the property kind of in the lower third. Right here is actually the property, the power line that's going to be taken out.
So the other thing about the Ames property, part of the blue trail is on the map. No longer water is either, that's going to be, this map is, listed, and take it off as post trail.
At the dock?
Yeah, the dock.
Okay, that's what I was looking
All the other comments, remove that, have a trail post on, it really isn't a trail.
It's quite wet there.
walked across there last week and didn't get my feet wet.
Cross that.
So then is
It's
there-
very open so that you could do a,
You
do
can,
a decent
I'm
size
talking about the black part.
the old road.
Yeah.
Like right here?
I'm talking
Oh,
about
sorry.
the dotted line.
Oh, to the left.
Oh,
Yeah, where
like
that.
right here. is
Yeah,
grass.
this little black one.
Yeah, that is
So
completely
this
submerged.
is.
Yeah,
That's fine. Black road. That's why. And that's actually where the spot here, the little dotted line that was here on our original maps for the blue trail. We do have trail space markings at both places. And take it out because the only way you can get to this trail the trail, and even take up. And I can't remember who said it, but that's one of the things not captured, we haven't done yet, is the label of roads. A little bit better.
That was helpful. I mean, Whipple is named way up on the left, but you have to then follow it, way up there.
So, to Greg's comments, anything you see, feel free to just send me a note. Let me go through a couple more of those. We currently have, this is the one that I actually have, from scratch, because we moved.
Which one are you on now, Russ?
So this now represents the moved trail from where the, housing is going to be. Total housing. The little white things are stone walls. What he hasn't got in here yet, is some information. Actually, remove the parcels to the total housing and what's shown here.
So the red to yellow,
That's gonna be, that should be.
that should be red.
And then yellow is, you'll notice again here on the bottom left-hand corner, that part of the parking and trailhead, that has to be removed, especially. You can walk there, and go park along. So really the only access, the only reasonable access, in this portion,
Yes.
and there's plenty of parking. I thought it was better to remove that. We just hadn't
Do you
done
think
that.
you're going?
Yeah. The other thing Greg has noted is that we have a map that's continuing to lay down and preserve, and one of our maps on our website, both of them.
Yeah.
So you can go over to the Tree and Gap Trail. I chose, first game I did, only showed the quickest way to get from Clark to the Tree and Gap Trail.
We'll be in touch about, to Sean and stuff. That one.
Trouble is, if you look at the joint, if you look at the joint map, you go down the call, now that's wrong, because it isn't enough. So we're gonna have to update both of those. And he does have some other trails early on, like David Way, that are shown. I suggested we should color them as they are in the maps. This is probably the easiest.
I'm gonna pass, while Russ is talking, I'm gonna pass around a page here, and there's a little snippet of the land trust map, which shows their layout and McCulloch not really colored in, but showing adjacent to that.
So that's one of the options we have to pursue, and that might take a little bit more effort.
Yeah, we have the resources to pay them extra. And looking at this, after printing it out, you get a better idea than looking at it on screen. This is a nice sized map, and to fit this property on it, it's gonna have to squeeze the map down, so we're gonna lose some granularity in our maps.
I like this because you were worried, of course, the contours would show very well. I'm pretty sure it's nice.
Yeah.
This is one of the flattest trails.
I have a question, what does open street map trail mean?
That's what I was telling you before. We'll come to it in a second.
Okay,
That's an available, trails.
okay.
It looks like there's a bench up on the top here, but then it's not in the key, right? So, like up in the little top portion.
Yeah, complete universe. The key, if you look at this one again, we're also missing distances. Unless he's captured the distance, but he's always long. So that's something he said.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so on this one, we have the benches here for people from observations, they're highlighted. Legend.
Can I ask you a question while we're talking about distances? Russ, I know that you had been obviously there's subjective, you've been talking about trying to rate trails as being easy or whatever. How would he, do you know how he would try to convey that?
I haven't answered that.
Okay.
That's what I asked people, how much of it, when I do the trails, I put a ton of things in, deep area, wet, rocky, loose. A lot of the trails are actually compact earth. Some are, you know, really kind of, it's steep, you know, I like, not even, some of the trails are, you know, some are quite steep.
Just getting back to your question too, Andrea, on the open street maps, one of the things we found early on in this process was, I don't know if that's LiDAR based or what, but Steve was picking up a lot of logging trails in McCulloch and other things, and he couldn't determine whether those were hiking trails or logging trails that we just ignored, but still have broken ground that so much shows. So we have to eliminate a lot of those from the map.
Yeah, so all of this other, that was a question.
Yeah.
Bill and some of the other maps. He added all that from his LiDAR days, and all the pieces of it. I remove all that. Not really trails and they're unlit trails. The reviews you can see, you can pick them out. People who use them, they're not our trails.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions on the call? Let's kind of get the flavor of what we have yet. Let's look at Champlain South. Let's go to Champlain North. Champlain South. So Champlain North has one section that if you look at the trail, just beyond the red and blue intersection here, there's a section that's impassable. I asked him to leave that trail as is, and then here, I looked at, off that. He's going to run a small section of that one too far off. So we really want to really address that. But if you try to walk it, it's going to be blue and yellow, you can't get there. So we won't probably do that.
Right up here, this red section?
We do the kiosks, and then probably should have a note that portions of it are leading up to water in that stuff. I think that's easy. I didn't try to create another trail. There are my water there. These lines are so that
Alternate or a bridge, is there
Bridge,
under what?
long bridge.
Okay.
On maybe you mentioned this, if you did, I apologize, Russ. Does the yellow trail not run to the Inns parking lot? Because I think that it was, at one point, we had an agreement with them that they would maintain that trail so their guests could just jump right up from the inn and start walking.
I've done that a number of times.
Pardon?
Chisbury Road or some road, it's very non-used road. Maybe is the parking lot for Ames, so you start at the O line for Bickford, end up at Ames.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah. Well, if you look at this here, this is somewhat the same issue as with McCulloch and Lang Allen. You have a land trust property in here, perhaps we want to identify the Boggy Hole property.
oh, yeah. And you're right.
Yeah. And
You were speaking about this yellow,
yes,
that I think it used to look back, but that this part of it, I think was,
there was some wet
closed.
spots, but
and then it goes out from like the barber's on to the back of the old line.
yeah, I think that your echo, yeah,
Okay,
one's less taxable than.
yeah, I think your eco warriors had worked on that
yes,
at one point.
yes.
As you come in, a little high, that's where it is. The other portion over there.
Well, I think we knew it was there, but then we bypassed it unintentionally. So it doesn't, I don't think, move back so much as where that eye is, it goes to the back of the old line man.
But we talked about Champlain South, we'll get to that, but boy, it looks like this trail really skirts the property boundary on this one too.
Yeah. So the white trail, you see by the contours, that's on the street. And that's, you can still do a loop. Going in red. You can go the other direction. But I think there were very few corrections in that trail from our original map, with the exception of that one water. And then this, he does show the extension of the yellow trail, and so on that.
Is there, what's Mike's road's name off of this?
What's that?
The name of West Rose, Rose Lane near Lodge. Yeah, there's a, it comes off of Route 1.
Yeah.
Isn't there an outlet from there?
Yeah,
Or maybe it's mentioned, oh, Hill House, that's what I'm thinking, Hillwood.
Yeah, that road needs to be named there too.
Yeah, it is under, but it's under the name, open.
you can drive by,
Yeah.
Yeah, that almost looks like a driveway.
that's what you think. Any other comments on this one? Okay, let's look at Champlain South. Here's an example where you cross essentially out of our property. So let's focus on the upper right-hand or left-hand corner. Blue, yellow, white, and red. Now, our original maps, white and red, is where our trail is. Coming from Library Lane, with the white trail up, so very pretty for the star.
Mm-hmm.
If you continue on the white trail, that is where, on the white trail junction, that is now the red trail. The white is just the trail. The red trail goes north, doesn't exist. The white is now the white trail.
Right.
So instead of blue, white, yellow, red, white, red, no trail.
So that whole trail is not there anymore, or just like?
Not marked. There's a section of it, it's not marked, it's not easy, you can't find it.
Peter had done a little bit of rerouting on the other end of from Meeting House of the
Yeah, so
Red trail.
this is,
Okay.
so let's go to Meeting House, there's a parking, you go, the right, you see this little loop in yellow,
Yes.
that's now marked blue trail.
Yes.
The old blue trail is too steep and it's, but it's
Exactly.
no longer there. And that's when the places are going to move, the blue trail loses here. Same thing is true for up here. Little section. Now, right between the blue and yellow, will be removed, the blue yellow.
So this is what it is now, or just, these are the colors that you see?
This is a combination of his light idea and our old map.
Okay.
Not correct.
Okay.
Okay, didn't they have, like, weren't there, like, coyotes ended up there, and people were apprehensive walking that little section?
Mostly green.
In this section.
Okay,
There's still,
okay.
I think that's the letter. tired of skin, all over again. Clean your shoes. Well, other than that, I think, this is actually one of our, I think, one of the nicest areas. We have trail now, hopefully it's not that far over into private property, because that goes right along the cliff. 10 feet on the other side of it is water.
The blue and yellow is, the blue and yellow on the inside there does not exist.
No, that's now the water.
That is now.
What about the little blue and yellow?
That blue yellow, is the blue yellow rust, that was that old road, it's kind of sunk and then it gets pretty wet.
So the real question for us, I think, is this section, hopefully that line of the property line moves over a little bit. I don't know how we do now. What is now our water trail.
How much, how confident are you in the accuracy that the trail actually goes off property? Can we just assume it is, or should we have a surveyor double check, or?
We probably, I have no idea. The trail markers, that's spot on when you walk it. You're putting right on the trail. That's true for this whole area.
It might be appropriate to just have somebody double check with the survey.
Yeah.
So, if we're off the property, we know exactly how much
Right.
that we need to move it.
That's actually the prettiest part, it's literally right to the water. I mean, an option, we could recreate the red trail. But the white trail is nice, it really is not active, but in the cliffs, as the yellow trail.
Is there another bridge on Blue Trail? Get closer to my house? Oh, it's
That's right there,
There's one here.
just a little tiny, 3 feet.
right, but it's not shown. Yeah, okay. But I think that there needs to be bridge.
But there's another bridge opportunity.
Okay, so he held the data, you just have to.
Yeah. Again, this is the first half.
Right.
It didn't even show up, but actually pays attention to
Right.
there's the next.
Going back to this, the new white trail, he's the top. Likely off.
Yeah, well, that's what I just asked Russ, is,
Even if you survey that, you could.
are we confident that this map is correct about property lines, or should we have a surveyor double check? Maybe it's appropriate to have Dick Gates or somebody go there and make sure.
Because you notice our original white trail off of that junction, that's also on.
Yeah, quite a bit, but it's quite a
Do
bit.
we know whose property owners? Do we know whose property owners are there?
I suspect some of that property is owned by Chris Kerr.
Behind the high school?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Where's the right of way granted?
I don't know. I don't know.
So it's either gonna be Chris or it'll be, Denise Ogden, because she owns basically right in front of the trail, is her house, a big stone house.
Right.
And then that goes pretty far, and then it morphs into the back of Chris's property. So those two properties are adjacent, and then they go pretty, I don't know how far, into the trailhead, but I think it's probably both of their land.
You know, when I found this error, I spent a lot of time trying to find, I went up there, it's big and then no blazes, and the red blazes, and Peter, over the years, they've moved. The white one is now clearly blazed, red. Presumably, it's clearly blazed.
Maybe there's someone involved with the surveyor. How would we do this? figure this out.
I'm not sure what you mean by involved, Fred. You mean-
Well, you gotta we have to establish the boundary lines.
Yes, yes.
So you guys-
Yeah, I
Surveyor, right?
Yeah, I would start by talking to the surveyor and asking him before we actually have him go out there, how would you determine this? Are the iron pins somewhere, or how is that property marked?
I mean, would that be, would the town have a record of like, maybe like Chris's property or the Ogden's property? They've gotta have a plot plan for those
Yeah,
parcels.
that would be another step in the process too, Maria, that, Dick Gates has got all these maps in high detail.
Yeah,
Much better than, than what we're looking at from town.
So do you have Dick Gates and ask him?
I would talk to Dick and say, looks from what our photographer is doing, that one of our trails may go into private land. If we wanted to confirm that was the case, how would we go about doing it? How would you determine that?
I understand software pipelines is frozen. Tell me what it is. The software that you talk with your file and have a GIS.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing I was gonna ask. When you walked along the white trail, was Steve using that to place it on the map? Russ? Or whatever, the trail that goes out of bounds? So did Steve have Avenza data for your travel on that trail?
No. But it's correct. I wasn't tracking it, using it.
Yeah. Well,
I
what's,
think the other question is this. Those comments. I don't know. I didn't get the nail on the head, Greg. What we do, I don't know. Because if we print the map, it's not gonna look.
no, you can't.
right,
Yeah,
I mean, that was a property owner, who was like, wow.
We can't leave it like that. We gotta- yeah. So,
And it's even our old white trail, clearly cross that boundary.
so I think we need to move on because we still have a fair amount of agenda left. But as we said before, if anybody has comments, please send them to Russ and CC me. I'm gonna look at these in more detail and.
And the last thing is about, we haven't, anything with the other.
Well, it's kind of, you're talking about Bartholomew, which we'll kind of segue into now. Just a quick summation of this project. We are not going to get this project done this fiscal year. I think we will have a substantial amount of it done. Do you know what the timeline is, Fred, when the Board of Finance might start looking at carryover requests? Is that usually in July or so?
Maybe next,
I know, sorry to put you on the spot, but,
in January,
so, I mean, for the monies that are unspent in 24, 25, that we want to use in 25, 26, generally, the process has been that I submit a request to Anita, and then it will eventually goes to the Board of Finance. But I think you guys rule on that.
we can talk about that.
Okay, well,
With the carryover, it's carryover.
yeah. So, let's move on to Bartholomew, and I will call on Bill and Andrew, and Bill can talk a little about his trails, and I think I sent you all copies of the signs.
Yeah. I think the idea was to try to make it more interesting trail to be positive of beavers, which that the other trail is a little bit boring. And this one,
This one was great.
just totally is right.
Those are red.
All trails, trails. And it's ways, they're cut, they're ways.
I think I sent them all to you.
Um, And there's two trails actually there, they're blazed with, white and beaver silhouettes. One is adjacent to Fighting Ball, and it goes, under the overpass, but it gives you a view right toward the lodge. And the second one, is right at the existing parking lot, you can notice that it goes right along the water, it goes past the beaver, the dam, big tree that tried to chew down the top, and then another one that did drop. And then, continues along the water, I think there's scent markings, which they begin to make mounds, there's scent on it for territorial. And then it continues all the way to the first bridge where we went out. But it's all glazed and open, reasonably fine. What we were hoping with the signs was to kind of have bigger grant, quick educational points, some fun facts about beavers, with the lodge, maybe they make their life, how they built it, with the trees, they cut chewed down, their teeth are orange, they're like iron, they have to chew to keep their teeth from growing. The scent mounts are to mark their territory for other beavers and identify beavers. A lot of them have chew marks on their tails, things like that. And of course, the beaver receivers, fantastic. For our alternatives. So, that was, I think, the idea. And then, of course, the signs you walk in, their eyesight is smell it, their hearing is people not too loud and possibly after dark or I think that it's still active, because that upper dam is not blocked. There's no flowing at all, and that would be kind of tell. The other, that trail between Whippoorwill and Ames, the dam is left, it's just flowing all over, so there's no beavers left in there. And of course, Greg walked into the lower one, and the beavers went in there, and it's wide open. That was essentially, just trying to make it a little more interesting.
Great.
Where on the map, like,
Yeah.
you know, the, like,
That map is, the marsh on that map is not correct. So, but it's about,
So, yeah, so,
one is here, the other one is sort of that.
so you could, when you would enter, you could go either way? but-
Yeah, you go either way, you won't miss it. You'll see right as you go up the parking lot.
So- did you and Andrea talk about sign stuff?
A little bit, I think it's Andrea.
Yes, when I saw you, Bill had given me these. And then, the question was what kind of material might we use for them?
I kind of, if it's not prohibitively expensive, I would kind of prefer to go with aluminum rather than, plastic covering. Yep.
So these are the aluminum and the passive that was used for the horseneck trees.
Those are really nice.
We're waiting for those cedar poles.
Yes.
Yeah, these are great. Poles, yes. The other, so this, to do two of the same from Chris was like $55 each, as it turned out. Staples has an alternative for $13, but it's like almost like a styrofoam, with a harder styrofoam, but, water resistant, not necessarily, even though they say it's durable and outside, and that has a year's guarantee. So-
My own, excuse me, Andrea, my own feeling is that you, as a municipality, and you're trying to present a image of a town that's taking care of its properties, whatever, I think these look much more professional than these paper kind of things.
Yeah, well, I'm just doing my due diligence on your comparison side.
The one thing I wanted to ask you both and Bill is, so one of the trails that you go up Button Ball a little bit, and then you go around the Beaver Deceiver. Are we gonna need directional signs to get people to go from the parking lot to there?
No, because you see it right as you drive in the parking lot.
Well, the first sign that goes to as you're facing into the property, the one that goes to the left of the Beaver Deceiver, that's pretty much right there, but you walk up a road a little bit and then,
Road,
yeah.
I'm not sure, maybe we need to put the sun, that sign.
Yeah, some kind of directional sign so people can find that trailhead. And the other thing I mentioned is we did prepare 2 quite nice beaver signs at Ames. So we can, because all the artwork and everything is done, we can get those reproduced, again, with aluminum in the mount and everything like that for around $800. And maybe one of each.
Oh, one of each?
Yeah, for both, $800.
Oh, wow.
There's no artwork, there's no
Yeah.
graphics, anything, they just reproduce what they already have.
And will we be able to restore the QR code from the original?
That's the one thing, that's one thing we would have to change. Actually, the QR code should work because we did I worked with Jen and Katie, and we redirected the page to an existing page. So that QR code does work, even if it's a little, it's not straightforward. So we might put those signs right by the parking area. And I think they're kind of nice too. Yeah. That's the other thing we want to talk about. And are we still juggling that as the September Hikers Happy Hour, right?
I think so, especially,
So Andrea, being the resourceful person she is, she didn't just stop to see what Eversource is doing on Champlain North. She managed to talk to them about possibly replicating what Logan did and getting a couple telephone poles.
I would just need to contact the person at the corner of Cedar Hollow, because as Bill pointed out, no matter how, getting the poles across, Logan's Bridge would be
Going to be a headache.
challenging, especially with the water. So if it's dropped at Cedar Hollow on the other side, it looks like and I believe, and maybe you told me this, that you thought that was the fellow who was kind of casually monitoring Bartholomew?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Geez,
I
that's
think
not
it's
a-
gonna be all right there.
Yeah.
On the behind. If not, we could always, like, we measured it, Peter and I said, about a 20-foot gap, which is huge, and we wanted to bring it up to make 24, so it's high. And so you might be able to get like 10 by, pressure treated 10 by 6, and get it to, put them both of them together and make it big. That way they carry them in without killing yourself. But if they can't hold it.
Well, the next is, what can go with that?
Pardon? Oh.
There you go. The ones they pull out of Champlain North, they can drop them like, oh, that's why I want.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Excellent.
Mark, for us to do, you're not very capable. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you won't miss it. That's pretty fun.
So, he's already in a meeting, but, Mike Aurelia was gonna meet with Bill, and take a look at that, because we'll certainly have to go to inland wetlands again, but I don't imagine it'll be more of a problem, more of an issue than having Logan's Bridge approved by them. So it'll just be probably a site walk. They can take a look at it, look at our plans, and give us an opinion then. So I think it's doable by September 100.
Great, when we do that, it's possible if I go and go, bring myself over
Yeah.
Distance,
Yeah.
and it's, with the beaver situation changed, especially lower on, as I said, I walked through there.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that eventually, so I have to go by order still, so, I think we're all set for Bartholomew. I do want to move on. Ann, would you like to talk about Wilcox and our stewards on Ferry?
Yeah, so, we had Wilcox come on June 11th, cutting down trees, that were already dead, most part.
Were these the Atlantis that were girded?
These were Atlantis trees we had killed, and then, given the number of windstorms we had, 9 months, we really felt, and some of them had already started, not the really big ones. We had a number of blowdowns, that either compromised the path, one of them actually ended on planting, but it survived, and, so we decided that to clean up some of these dead soldiers, widowmakers. Not that there's a lot of traffic on the property, but, were they to come down on their own, it could make access into the property. And that needs to sort of be under discussion, the meeting perhaps, going forward, what do we think about managing these? We want to get rid of them gradually, just cut them down, in the end. But, anyway, Wilcox was, we went with the original, that selected, proved to be extremely problematic to coordinate with, and, so they came on to cut things down the way they had been requested, and didn't damage anything doing it, which is no small feat in a place. But, didn't actually cut them into small chunks, that they really left on the property. But the idea was to kind of keep them out of the way enough and cut into no more than 4 foot lengths, so that if need be, 2 men could roll them out of the way. We weren't planting it. And they didn't really cut. So I was thinking about probably another thing going back. And Peter and I happened to be walking there, and he said, "Oh, I think I can do it." And it's good practice for us, and so that's what they were working on. Took a hiatus for the family of days of reiterating seed and life, but so that should be manageable. They're also doing the fine off away from plantings, which I think we lost 1, maybe 2 of the Pablo we planted, but everything else.
How are the Christmas ferns?
They're.
Is it well there?
Okay. And, in terms of, one of the biggest concerns here, is trying to get made a ground cover going, so that you can keep the spaces a little bit more heavy. Ferns are the, nourished, although most of the other glacier stuff also comes back, it's not as party as Christmas. The geraniums mostly seem to come back. Ginger, and
The water now has been an issue.
we're not watering anymore.
Was it you or Evan that said at a certain point you want us, that they need to be on their own?
You gotta cut it.
Rather than nurturing their outlaws.
Which also a major factor in not did do, with permission, I did a little transplant from, south to, the landing, I transplanted in the Mayflower. And in chunks that I took out, they just, it didn't look like someone could have brought in it. Although probably people would have just thought, oh, deer was or whatever. But anyway, they came with some of those little, almost, yeah, they're just still kind of. So anyway, last time I looked, they were made. They're really not big. I'm not sure.
It's gonna rain the weekend.
Yeah, I did it 2 weeks back when we were getting lots of rain and it was cool and, that was good. as it turns out.
Thank you again. We have the stewards report next on the agenda, but they're pretty straightforward. And I think we can move on to Bill and Fred. Bill with Fred, and also, I would mention to you also, so Rob McCarthy was very interested. I don't know if you know Rob. He's on planning. I think he's on the fire department as well. Yeah, he was very, he's your equivalent on a bike. Okay, he likes to go.
Biking, right?
Yes, yeah, long bike rides. So, and he was the one that first suggested trying to put a bridge or something through there. So,
I looked into, it's fairly dry where the ruts are, there's not that much water, but where the rut on the edges, if it's cleaned out, you don't have to do much for 200 feet. Then you hit the culvert where you need about 8 foot. And then it gets dry again. And then the beaver, for some reason, went to the south side of that road to the next thing, and that's about 40 feet, and that could be done in a couple of different ways. But there's a lot of big beaver trees that are dead right over that end of the property, so that would be part, and there's rock about 1/10 of a mile in, and there's some full rock walls, so you wanted to make piers or something, and maybe it's cut to that without a lot of expense. Just to be doing it, helping the beavers now reestablish on the lower end and let it out.
well, the one thing I would suggest when you're looking at this is not to discount the more higher tech processes, because the state has a recreational grants program that the timing will probably be late fall, and we could give that a shot. And this is right up their alley. It's exactly what they're looking for. They're looking to extend trails and have trails cross towns and go multi-towns or whatever. So I think this suits the goal of the program. It's just
The land trust has a piece of property that abuts Champlain south and northeast corner.
yeah.
And I walked that. They haven't access to Whippoorwill, so they cut a little trail there. You could then go over and call it.
We're actually, there's not, the townwide trail is actually within reach. There's a lot of little segments left, but there's things going on for each of them. We'll talk about that a little later in the meeting. So.
I thought I had John McCarthy's number, but still.
Robert McCarthy has they built this company that provides a walkway.
Yeah, he had an idea for a walkway, and Russ Fox sent me an idea from something he saw up in Sweden that was some kind of a walkway through there too. And Russ had the advantage, as I recall, of minimal disturbance. It almost kind of floated on top of things. So I don't know that you have to put a lot of piers in the ground. Rob was talking about a machine that can go in there and into the muck, but still put piers down. I don't know.
So what kind of project would the state fund? Would it fund something that collaborative or that advanced? Or looking for something?
No, I think the state, a lot, from what I can see, to be frank with you, I haven't looked at the exact details of the projects, but the grants seem to be in the $25,000 to $40,000 range, so they're not just throwing a log across a puddle of water.
That's the budget range.
Yeah, and I think we have a little bit of advantage in that. Lori Giannotti, who used to be the administrator of that program and is now president of the Deep River Land Trust, was an associate of mine at the Gateway Commission. I maintained contact with her. We could consult with her and talk to her about what Allison Bradley's her successor. What's Allison going to be looking at in the next grant round? So that would be, I think, a help for us. Moving on to community. Is there anything that you wanted to say about happy hours? Did you talk to Leslie or to?
I was not at
Chris?
the last happy hour, but, Hiker's happy hour, but Mary Devens was, who was not at the first, and Joe was. And Mary, who was reluctant to criticize the advertisers, said, this is terrible. It was cool.
Oh, wow.
But,
I think it got worse.
yeah. My approach, and we're waiting for Chris to get back to us about talking. He wanted to meet Amy, who is I think a new employee there, and Leslie, who's away for a family emergency temporarily. So both in their court, they are waiting to find a date that's convenient for them to call Mary and myself in. My approach would be to ask them what is their feedback and their thinking, and if we haven't been charged, does this mean we're not paying for these advertisers? If we're not, then it's like, okay, thank you. If we are to pay for going forward, then I would like to suggest that they work to their strength, and make cheese sandwiches and have them enforced. And I know it's important to take care of overhead and staff and things, but they could certainly, they're great, so it's, you pick up a grape or two and not the whole thing. But if we're not paying, then we're not paying, and I think there are other things that.
We want to suggest, we'd like to pay, and this is what we'd like to have. If it's not working out, otherwise, you know,
We can do
we
that.
can save money, but we could also,
They haven't charged us, either of us, for this year, and if they charged us last year, it did not come to me.
I think they charged us for one of the two. They didn't charge us for the second one.
So it has to be worked out, and she's a businesswoman, and she knows, and I recognize the relationship between the Land Trust and Chris Kitchings, and Ken, who are very generous, and I wouldn't do it. I know I'm a little more frightened in these meetings, but that's not how I was shocked, but I was.
Come to grapes,
Anyway,
Well, we have some time to.
we did, yeah.
And so midsummer, I wanted to thank Christine for letting me know about an oversight and filling out a form. Unfortunately, both Frankie Neville and Elspeth were not at Waymark today. I think Elspeth's going to come in tomorrow. I know her fairly well between my wife working with them, and we've consulted all their fundraisers. I don't envision a problem being there at all, but we do need to cross our T's and dot our I's. Christine, thank you for that.
yeah, so we're getting on.
So I know Old Line Land Trust is going to actually be Audubon this year, so I kind of requested and then we be next to them again for this year's Audubon instead of
The land trust is gonna be Audubon?
Yeah, that's what,
So does that mean that we would be over there too, or?
I assume so.
Okay,
So,
so how is that working? Are we not working with?
everything seems to be like in a very different
Okay.
place. We were looking at the map last night.
So one of the things that I talked about with Elizabeth last year, I'm drawing a blank on her last name, but she's the Lime Art Association Executive Director. Yes, thank you. Is that Audubon had the paid admission car show, and we were thinking, we did not want people to have to pay an admission to get into our booth. So that's something we're looking to again.
So,
I don't know, I'm almost positive that they are going to
Yeah.
be.
I know they're accepting more people this year, so conservation again is gonna have a booth. I understand harbor management wants a booth this year too. So
Yeah, I'm almost positive. at Audubon.
I'll know more within a day or
okay,
two.
so, yeah.
I think I'd prefer to be where we were in the past.
Yeah,
It's kind of a nice spot to be right along that sidewalk.
right. Yeah, so then, all right, so we may not be with our friends in the Lions Trust.
So in terms of putting together some type of table or whatever, we do have one more meeting before midsummer.
Yes.
If you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, so we have, we kind of have a lot of supplies from last year. We still have like the beads and the whistles, so we can use, safety bracelets that we, did last year. There's lots of coloring pages left. Andrea had found, I think you were with her, some posters that former members made.
Yeah.
That I think just make a little tidying up, but they were really good information about the trail, so, you know, more the maps that still look like this. And then one about, beaver specifically, which is really up to you guys. I think we're gonna try to make a
I'd like to
little-
step that up. and
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
put something about the beaver deceivers.
Yeah, well, I was actually gonna ask you, specific, how we're, but rather than just put one up there. But I can talk to that, and, but yeah, just I think need a little updating, but I'm happy to. Yeah, and then we've got the signs up, but I think we'll hold it down like we have time.
Is there gonna be, they're providing tables?
Yeah.
I think they did last time, right?
Yeah, that's another advantage to being there, is they give us the tables. And Evan has arranged for a tent, again, from the Lime Land Trust.
Yeah.
And then tablecloth and the sign.
One thing,
Can I ask a question? So I was overlooking at these posters, and we want to, like, find how many we really want all together before, you know, I was gonna kind of condense two into one, is that the
So
idea?
we could do the one Ferry Road,
Okay.
one on Beavers, and one on our trail. And the Beavers and the, trail,
Yeah,
are pretty
yeah.
substantial, it's on a campus of things, which we up against, and we,
And then you have the easel.
the easel for yours. And then there was a talk about maybe the video thing.
Right.
I did
Thank you for reminding me.
I did find that like electronic, picture frame thing. I can look to see how appropriate that would be, how long it runs and so forth.
Would you do that? That
Yeah,
would be great.
Yeah, I can do
Because
that.
I can get some videos on a thumb drive, and we can just let it go.
Do you still have your quiz thing, Fred?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Did that seem like it went over well?
Oh, yeah, oh my gosh.
There's a little bit of motion pending there, I apologize. Would you like to call that out again?
Yeah, no, that was terrific.
Yeah, this is- Do you want to do the questions, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'll send out, questions we had last year.
okay, terrific. So we have our,
That'll be 4 posters for the display.
So then, we,
Maybe we don't do the trail one, I don't know, because you have.
Well, we're gonna have, I was gonna say, we're gonna have little things up
Might
like
be
that.
better.
we have these now, we have 20 of these to give out.
I don't know that we'll have all of them
Yeah.
mapped by then.
Yeah. It's probably
So the
just before we go there.
ferry landing and a cliff.
Yeah, otherwise,
So I would just mention, I guess, that everybody's welcome to take some of those. They're not as, quality's not quite as good as our last printer, but they're done by the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, and their print price, I don't know. They don't make any money on it, I don't know if they're a governmental thing or what. I have 1,000 printed up for less than $100. They did a nice printing job. The paper's not quite coated and not quite as nice.
Do we put these at the library?
Pardon?
Do we put any of these at the library?
I just got them in, so we need to start putting them around. I actually need to run around town with 2 hats on for the road safety survey too.
I could put them at the library and go.
Oh, that would be terrific.
Thank you.
And the map was edited by Steve Perry, and Horseneck Creek is on there, so you can't say we're not publicizing it. Fall Events Magazine is due more or less the end of July, and Christina's offered to write something. She had suggested maybe 6, but
yeah, but.
more of a fall-based
Yeah, I mean,
timeframe.
in listening to kind of our discussion tonight, I wonder if it might be about, like, the updates that we're making in terms of remapping, in terms of rerouting trails, things like that.
That would be fun, that would be interesting, yeah.
Great idea.
So, you know, to give people a sense of what, you know,
How busy we are.
There was also suggested that maybe we could find a small log from Bartholomew, one that looks like it's just.
Oh, that would be
That's
great.
why it's weird.
Hmm?
That's just, when it's great.
So, since maybe you're close to it and you walk it frequently, if you come across one, maybe for display.
Yeah,
I have it.
very good.
Yep, speaking of beavers, is a nice segue again, is conservation, has written me back and forth, and it's kind of an interesting relationship between, Randy, who is one of the co-chairs, and Gary Gregory, who's not even on the commission anymore, but wants to stay involved in promoting these talks. But I identified a woman, Ginny Apple, who I had seen, on a Zoom presentation with the Farmington Valley River Association. She was fabulous talking about beavers. So we'll see if we can maybe get her in town this fall.
Yeah.
And were you interested in working with conservation? I think they'll probably do a lot of the legwork too, Joan, but
I'll act as like a liaison
Yeah.
or whatever, sure.
so I think that should be great.
But this fall, we're thinking,
I,
at this
I,
point.
we need to come up with a schedule. They have a number of speakers, and I'm not sure what their schedule is.
Well, I'll just wait and,
Yeah.
you know, let me know.
Oh, yeah. Wanted to break down our driveway a couple days ago.
Oh, yeah, we've got them in our yard.
People find us frustrating.
And I think I shared this with you. I was invited, a little bit of, to attend this session on hazard mitigation planning, that Russell will probably be quite active in another one of his hats, but apparently open space participated in that probably in 2020. And it was Amanda and Bill Dunbar. And some interesting things were in that old plan. Speaking of the property that the town owns that has these little bomb holes in there, one of the things that was in the plan was Old Lyme has a tree warden, tree commission, and a budget in place for tree trimming and removal of debris. The town should evaluate whether an open space property can be used to store the dead or dying trees. So there was
Be a dump for their,
a new stump.
So what are the stumps of this block? Yeah, I don't know where, hey, don't solve the material.
I don't know.
I know a lot of this stuff on the side of the road,
Yeah,
you know, the bigger blocks.
yeah, that,
yeah,
well,
they look they cut
that,
it off.
is that DOT or the Eversource people doing that?
I mean, a lot of what you're seeing is, getting some sources.
Yeah.
I mean, also around town, there are trees.
Yeah, I know on,
And these logs.
yeah, well, they give people the opportunity if they want to use it for firewood.
I mean, I haven't heard that's any problem, or just,
Yeah. The other thing that was interesting too, and maybe whoever's going to work on it next can consider it when we do an open space plan, but said that it's interesting, they showed that there's a consultant that presented the program. They were showing houses that were repeatedly flooded that towns could buy, level, and just leave that property to be open space, where we're talking about tidal rise, flooding and SLR, which is what, Russell? Sea level rise? Yeah, sea level rise are issues, so I hadn't heard of open space being involved in buying properties that might be inundated, but that was an interesting thing to see. So I have been contacted a couple of times, maybe once every 6 months, by this gentleman called John Newstead. He was working on what he called the Atlantic Circuit, where you could hike, I don't know, maybe from Africa up through Europe and then North America down to Chile. And apparently he's still pursuing that. He has a Zoom speaking with land trusts and towns in Massachusetts, and he's going to try to schedule one for Connecticut. Would you be interested in seeing what it?
They have so many international operations. Maybe it's something Canada.
Yeah, so I guess it's been changed to from the Atlantic Circuit Trail to the International Recreational Route. Okay. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is to go into executive session. So let's see if there's anybody that's